Welcome to our quarterly safety meeting. It's going to be Internet security protecting our children. It is with great pleasure and honor to present to you a group of men that I've worked with, some over the years and some have recently partnered with. So with that said, I appreciate your current and continued support in what we do as law enforcement officers. With that said, I'd like to make some brief introductions from the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Eastern District of Louisiana, Mr. Brian Klebba. If I didn't mispronounce your name, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Chief of the Fraud Unit and Protection, the Project Safe Childhood Coordinator. He provides supervisory oversight to matters of public corruption, complex white-collar financial fraud, and cyber-related offenses. He's also an associate professor of trial advocacy at Tulane University School of Law. Also, skills curriculum professor at Loyola University School of Law with a focus in federal criminal procedure. From the Department of Homeland Security, we have Mr. John Schmidt. He is the group supervisor for the Cyber Crimes and Commercial Trade Fraud Group. He serves as the primary child exploitation coordinator for the Cyber Crimes Unit here in the New Orleans area. He manages all computer forensic analysis, not only in the New Orleans area, but covers a 5-state area: Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Alabama. Mr. Michael Brunet, Special Agent with Homeland Security, currently assigned to the RAC out of Houma, and please let us know what that acronym stands for when we get to you, sir. Mr. Brunet was the case agent for Operation Roundtable. This investigation involved a subscription-based child pornography website based in Abita Springs, Louisiana, with more than 27,000 members subscribed to this website. And this case will be discussed at some point this morning. Mr. Brunet has been the case agent for over 73 child exploitation investigations that have led to arrest, searches, seizures, and convictions of sexual predators. And last but not least, Mr. William Shannon Krieger, an analyst with Homeland Security, a member of the Hero Corps, the Child Rescue Initiative in 2013, and we also appreciate your service to our country as a wounded veteran with your service in the Iraq initiatives. So with that said, we'd like to, if you would give a welcome to this esteemed group.
Morning, everyone, and I'll just follow up what Tommy was saying. I have the pleasure of working with these gentlemen day in and day out. A lot of people probably don't know what Homeland Security investigations are doing out there for the protection of our children in our country, and I can assure you that they are the single finest federal law enforcement agency in the world, and it's a pleasure to work with you gentlemen every single day, so thank you very much. This morning we're going to talk about internet safety. For those of you who have children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews, hopefully you'll take something away from this, some pointers that we can add, some things we can make you aware of. I personally have 2 daughters. One's in 6th grade and one's in 3rd grade, and the things that these kids are exposed to on the internet is frightening, it's terrifying, and we as parents and protectors of these children really need to be mindful of what is out there on the internet and the dangers that lie there.
It happened to me 5 years ago. My parents were divorcing and things at school and with friends weren't too good. I felt like the world was falling down around me. That's when I met someone online. We would chat about everything in my life. I finally had someone to take my side and see things my way. I had someone who put me first. No matter how much I thought we could trust each other, I knew better than to meet in person with someone I had met on the internet. But one day, when school was dismissed early, there was someone waiting for me at my front door. I never thought I'd find myself in this situation. I learned the hard way that no matter who you think you're talking to online, there are people out there looking to hurt you. It doesn't matter if they're male or female, or if they look a little rough around the edges, or even if they're the most beautiful person. These people exist, online and in the real world.
happened to me too. I was 14 and someone online sent me a private message. I shouldn't have responded, but I messaged back and 7 days later, agreed to be picked up outside of my house at midnight. I was taken to another house and what happened there was terrifying. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. I felt numb and powerless and didn't know what to do. I was too afraid to tell my parents and ashamed of what everyone would think of me. But hiding it was a mistake. I saw the car that I was taking and driving around my neighborhood all summer long. Was I being targeted again, or was someone else being victimized? I finally decided to tell someone.
I have to live with the decision I made to trust someone I met on the internet.
But the important thing is that I told someone. I'm not a victim, but a survivor.
Let's talk about why we're here today. Because 54% of our children ages 9 and 14 think that it's safe to meet someone who they've met on the internet. Children nowadays are equating knowledge and friendship with someone who they've only had a couple of casual conversations with in a text message, on a Facebook page, somewhere on the internet. They think that this means that this is someone that they can trust, that this is someone they know. 90% of males and 70% of females aged 13 to 14 report accessing sexually explicit material on the internet. 63% of teens say they know how to hide what they're doing on the internet from their parents. And porn is one of the most popular search terms for children. And I'm going to direct your attention to age 7 and under, number 4. Okay, a child 7 years or younger, the 4th most popular search term is porn. Imagine what you are going to get if you put in a Google search term or a Yahoo search term, porn. You are going to see some of the most depraved images and videos imaginable. You're going to see child pornography. You're going to see bestiality, masochistic abuse, children being sexually victimized as young as toddlers. If parents aren't watching what their kids are doing on the internet, these kids are becoming victimized. These kids are seeing things that no child should see at such a tender age. All right? And look at this statistic. There are nearly 750,000 registered sex offenders in the United States. Now, what is frightening about this particular statistic is this represents only the people who have been arrested, who have been prosecuted, who have been convicted, and required to register as a sex offender. It does not account for those individuals who are out there on the internet who we do not know, who we have not caught yet, who we have not convicted or required to register. And at any given time, right now, 5 o'clock this evening when your children are doing their homework, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night when they're supposed to be in bed, there are 50,000 active predators out there on the internet actively seeking to meet children and do harm to them. 50,000 of them. So let's take a look at some of the risks online for children. All right, exposure to inappropriate material, pornography. Adults asking kids to do inappropriate things. I'm going to share with you something called the grooming process. The grooming process is something that we see in law enforcement all the time. It's a process whereby predators will step by step engage in a practice with a child in order to build up trust with that child, in order to shame that child. And the intent is to get that child to a point in which they feel like they cannot report what's going on. So a common thing is that after a predator engages in an initial conversation or two with a child, they will then send them a picture of pornography. Could be adult pornography, but they will do that because they know that that child is then embarrassed, and that child then is less likely to report this to a trusted adult. Once they have done that, then they will request from that child an image of that child. So they will say, use your webcam, or take a picture of your penis, or take a picture of your breast, or something like that. And while the child doesn't want to do that, the child wants to report this to a parent, They are afraid to, because they know that they weren't supposed to be talking to strangers on the internet because their parents have told them that, and they know that this person has already sent them an image. And a lot of times these predators will use that and they will threaten them, and they say, well, I'm going to tell your parents if you don't do this. I'm going to tell your brothers and sisters. I'm going to contact your school and tell them that you sent me a picture or that you received a picture from me. And so they get these kids to a stage where they feel victimless, or they feel like they're powerless and they have no one to go to, no one to report this to. All right, harassment and bullying. This is something that is different for those of us in the room. Kids are now bullying and harassing people in the virtual world. They're posting things on Instagram. They're tweeting things about other kids. Within an instant, an entire child's school can know something that that child or a classmate did. And so this is where we're seeing a lot of the bullying and harassments and things like that. Theft of personal information. This is something that all of you as parents and grandparents should be aware of. If your kid or your granddaughter or grandson is using your computer at home, they're logging into your network at home, and you're not watching what they're doing, your personal financial information could be susceptible to attack. This can happen a lot of times if they're going to peer-to-peer file sharing websites, or if they're going to websites where they're downloading music and videos, and they're non-proprietary sites, meaning they're not like an iTunes site where they're paying for the music, they're paying for the video, they're paying for the movie. All right? If they're going to these sites where they're downloading illegal content or content that's normally copyrighted but they're not paying for it, that's where we're seeing in law enforcement a lot of these videos and images with embedded bots, viruses, and Trojans. So you download a movie to your computer, or your grandson downloads a movie or even a game to your computer. Well, unbeknownst to you, they've downloaded a virus or a Trojan to your computer, which means if you're using your computer to check your Chase bank statements, to do TurboTax at tax time, if you're paying things on PayPal and you're typing your credit card number and your password, all of that information can be out there and traded and trafficked. So you need to watch what people are doing on your computer. And then there are the last three: assault, abduction, and death. Those are the three that we in law enforcement, and I'm sure all of you, are most concerned about. So in order to illustrate this, let me tell you about Casey Woody. Casey Woody, by all accounts, was an honor student. Her father was a deputy sheriff in her hometown in Arkansas. Tragically, her mother had been killed in an automobile accident just about a year prior to Casey being reported missing. Okay? The police and federal law enforcement, the first thing they do in a child abduction case is they go to look at what the child's doing online. And they determined that Casey had 2 online boyfriends. All right? One was a 13-year-old boy living in Georgia. The other was a 17-year-old boy purportedly living in California. Following up on these 2 leads, they sent agents to the California address and to the Georgia address. They determined the one in Georgia was in fact who he said he was. He was a 13-year-old boy who she had been communicating with. Unfortunately, the 17-year-old was not a 17-year-old. He was a grown man living in California, and he had sent Casey an image of his nephew. That's who Casey thought she was communicating with, his nephew. All right? He misrepresented his name. He misrepresented his identity. The police and the FBI subpoenaed the credit card records of this individual and found that he had rented a storage unit in Casey's hometown. That was the only lead they had. So they go to the storage unit. Casey had been gone less than 48 hours. And as they roll up to the storage unit, they hear a single gunshot ring out from within the storage unit. Okay? That was Fuller, self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. When they got in the storage unit and they found out what had been going on, they found Casey's dead body. She had been killed, but not before she had been sexually victimized over and over and over again. All right? She had been gone less than 48 hours. The chance of recovery for us in law enforcement of recovering a child drops to less than 50% after the first 24 hours. And the reason for that is simple. Usually one perpetrator and one witness to the crime. All right? So what does the investigation reveal? That Fuller had met Casey in a Christian teen chat room. All right? These are where the predators are. They're not at iwannastalkyou.com. They are where our children are going to be, okay? They're going to be searching, school websites. They're going to be they're going to be trying to get themselves invited into conversations with our kids on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and everything else. All right? And Casey never knew his real name or identity, and she had never given out her home address. He was able to figure out where she lived based on innocuous postings that she had put on the internet about, exchanging music and things like that. Our kids are putting an awful lot of information about themselves out there on the internet. All right? You're not going to put a yard sign in your front yard and say, with a picture of your children, and say, this is my son and daughter, this is how old they are, this is where they go to school, and this is where they're going to be at soccer practice this afternoon up at the Fly. Of course not. But that's what's going on the internet. And that's what we as parents are allowing our children to do. Some parents are actually putting this stuff on the internet. If parents are, constantly on Facebook updating their Facebook page and telling everybody where they're going, well, guess what? You're given a roadmap of how to find your children. All right. Children are the ideal victims. All right. We know about cognitive development. We know that our children's frontal lobes are not fully developed until sometime in the mid-20s. All right. And the thing that isn't developing in the children is that sense that, maybe I shouldn't do this. All right. Maybe this is dangerous. And that's what children don't have fully developed, and that's what these predators are betting on. And they're betting on their naivete. They're betting on the fact that kids who are going through puberty are more likely to rebel against their parents and be looking for an outlook, looking for somebody on the internet who will talk to them, all right? Maybe they're being bullied at school. Maybe their parents are going through a divorce, and they're looking for someone to say, I love you, all right? And believe me, these predators will do that. These predators will give them gifts. They will say, yes, you should be able to go to that dance. If I were with you, I'd let you go to that dance. They'll buy them things. They'll send them, computers and phones. And the reason why they're doing that is because they want to continue the communications with them in secret. All right. So this is who your children think they're talking to, right? In actuality, it's a guy like this. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about unknown predators because in the course of supervising federal child exploitation investigations now for 12 years, we see a lot of this. All right, this particular picture, this is Jane. Agent Brunet, you want to talk about who Jane is? First off, this is the case agent on this particular example that we're going to talk about.
Yes, Jane is actually Anna Smith, a.k.a. Jenna Hottie, a.k.a. Jonathan Johnson from Abita Springs. Mr. Johnson realized that he can use this female's identity. She's a young-looking adult porn star, and Mr. Johnson was able to take numerous clips or videos of her from the internet and turn those into endless loops of normal everyday computer activities, such as typing on a computer or having videos on webcam. Then Mr. Johnson would then use those videos to make contact with young boys in order to eventually groom them and have them engage in sexually explicit activity online.
And what sort of applications, Agent Brunet, was Jonathan Johnson and these other predators using in which the children were becoming victimized and engaging in this?
Most oftentimes he was using Skype, which everyone has access to Skype. A lot of families use that, and the children believed that, or the young boys that Mr. Johnson and his whole child pornography enterprise were victimizing, the children believed that they were communicating with females this whole time. I mean, and can
you tell them what chat roulette is? Is that one of the applications they used?
Well, yes, one of the applications as well is chat roulette, and basically you just go to this website, and as the name indicates, you don't know who you end up speaking with. And a lot of these kids are on the internet thinking that they can go to a website such as this and that they'll be communicating with someone who is not a threat to them. However, they oftentimes run into someone of Mr. Jonathan Johnson's caliber.
All right, thank you. So what Agent Brunet and his other co-agents discovered was that this website being run out of Abita Springs by Jonathan Johnson had over 27,000 members worldwide. And the boys who were being victimized, being targeted, were on the ages between 10 and 14 years old. because these predators, these men, were using these videos of young girls, these boys, you know, being the age that they were, they weren't thinking that, well, maybe this isn't going to be this girl. And these girls, through the predators, through these fake personas, would ask the boys to engage in sexually explicit behavior. They would ask them to masturbate on their web camera. And so Homeland Security determined that somewhere between 2,000 young boys worldwide were victimized by this. And what is most disturbing about this is that all of those videos now, of those 2,000 victims, are out there on the internet for these predators to trade and traffic in. And that I, working for the U.S. Attorney's Office, or these gentlemen working for Homeland Security, we don't have the power to remove that material from the internet. Once a child makes or sends a sexually explicit video or image of themselves, that is out there forever. We don't have the technology to remove it and to prevent that child from, each time that video is shown, being victimized over and over again. So this is one of the ways in which chat roulette works. You're randomly assigned to someone else who's logged into it, and you don't know who you're going to be getting when you sign on to there.
Meeting a teen girl online is actually pretty easy. You can go into any chat room and just start talking. Most of the girls are usually so insecure and desperate for attention.
Attention from older guys is totally flattering. They're so much more mature and understanding than the guys my age.
Age actually works to my advantage. They like to brag to their friends that they're dating an older guy, so I just play along and pretend I'm really
interested in the same things I am. You can talk forever and really get to know someone without worrying about looks or whatever. That's the best thing about
chatting. Seems unthreatening to them, so they lower their guard. After a while, I start talking about how we're soulmates and how lucky we are to have found each other.
Other people don't understand. I know what I'm doing. If you really care about each other, there's nothing wrong with
meeting them is the goal. Once I get them out of their house, well, that's when things get really interesting.
Online predators know what they're doing. Do you?
Agent Brunet, you wanted to add something?
Yes. One thing I wanted to include regarding Operation Roundtable is November of last year, we conducted a nationwide roundup to conduct search and arrest warrants on the identified domestic members of Jonathan Johnson's child pornography enterprise. In speaking with children being victimized, one of the most egregious offenders was identified as a 14-year-old male in Iowa. So not only are these online predators trying to victimize the children and have them engage in sexually explicit activity online, when they do find a child that is more, I guess, engaged in the activity that they're involved in, that child becomes more familiarized in dealing with the child pornography aspect instead of being a victim. And then this 14-year-old, instead of being a victim of Jonathan Johnson and his child pornography enterprise, he actually started out and went online and built a female persona and victimized even more children. So that's one more thing to be concerned with children online, is that predators may also try and groom the child to become a predator as well.
We're going to talk briefly about, this is another Homeland Security case. The defendant's name was Michael Meany, and he's a prime example of one of these predators. Michael Meany was identified, and this is why it's so important and why I share this with you all, is because you need to communicate to your loved ones, to your younger loved ones, to report this information to us. What happened with Michael Meany was a 13-year-old girl living in St. Charles Parish was online. She was on a website called teenspot.com. And on teenspot.com, you're supposed to be a teenager, all right? And it was a platform for kids to communicate with each other. Well, Michael Meany was on teenspot.com and some other websites, and he started communicating with this young girl, lied about his age to be able to get in there, and lied about his age to talk to her. Well, after about 2 weeks, he then disclosed to the girl that he was in fact 30 years old. Well, that was also a lie because he was closer to 40 years old. But the girl, thank goodness, went to her mother, and she and her mother completed what's called a cyber tip. Very easy. You go to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's website, and you just basically type in a little bit of information. What website were you on? What occurred? Creepy guy contacted me, said he was 30. What was his screen name? What date and time? And that information is then disseminated to the field. And so even though the cyber tip went up to Virginia, they distributed it to New Orleans, to the Homeland Security Office, and based on that, they were able to open up an investigation, identified Michael Meany as living in Metairie, across the street from a playground no less, executed a search warrant in his residence, and found evidence in there that he was communicating with over 200 young girls across the United States. We had a notebook that we discovered during the search, and the notebook literally had children's names and their addresses and their phone numbers, all the way down to what they liked on their pizza, because Meany would order pizza for his favorites and wanted to know what toppings they wanted and wanted to know what their addresses were in order to send those pizzas. So we had this notebook of 200 names, and we didn't know what to do with it. In the end, what we knew we had to do was we had to try to identify all 200 of those victims. And in doing that, we determined, or Homeland Security investigations determined, that Meany had actually raped 3 girls in that notebook. One living in Louisiana, one living in Mississippi, another victim who lived up in Brewer, Maine, and then Meany actually had a plane ticket, and he was going to fly to Boston, Massachusetts at the end of the month. And we have no doubt, based on communications with a girl who lived outside of Boston, that that would have been his 4th victim. None of these girls had reported this to their parents. The first time it was reported was when law enforcement showed up at their doorsteps, okay? And if it weren't for that young girl being brave enough and being smart enough and her mother encouraging her to complete that cyber tip, I have no doubt in my mind that that victim in Boston would have been raped as well, and that countless other girls would have been victimized, all right? And this is what I'm telling you, like, these people will kind of put out their the buckshot approach. They'll try to communicate with as many children as possible because they're waiting for that 1, 2, or 3 kids to let their guard down, who are looking for some sort of contact, looking for some sort of friendship, and Meany was that guy. The girl in Maine, folks, she had a cell phone, and Meany instructed her to call him when she got to school, and she left that open line on all day long while she was at school because Meany, who drove riverboat pilots up and down the river, wanted to be able to listen to her conversations with her friends. And she invited him into conversations with her friends on Facebook and these applications because he said, well, I want to meet your friend. And they would do that. And so this is why you never know who your friends are, your kids' friends are online. You go, well, he's a friend of Ashley, and I know Ashley really well, but Ashley really doesn't know this guy. And that's what he was doing, and that's how he met more and more children. And if only that she lived with her grandmother. If only that girl's grandmother had reviewed her cell phone and saw that there was a 7-hour telephone call between her in Maine and some guy living in area code 504, that might have been prevented. So watch what your kids are doing with their phones. Watch what they're doing online. All right, who are we talking about? Almost always we're talking about men. They almost always act alone. And what's important, the takeaway from this is they come from all walks of life, okay? Lawyers, doctors, clergymen, you name it, they can be predators. All right, let's talk about a relatively new phenomenon, sexting.
We report tonight on a troubling trend involving teenagers and cell phones. You may have heard about it. It's called sexting. 20% of teenagers, 20%, admit to sending naked or nearly naked pictures of themselves in text messages. Unfortunately, many are unaware of the consequences, which can be life-altering. Sexting has led to child pornography charges against teenagers in at least 10 states. Here's Gigi Stone.
Today's teens cannot go a moment without their digital lifeline, constantly on cell phones, chatting and texting. But increasingly, texting is turning into something called sexting, using cell phones to swap nude photos of themselves.
We think it's a troubling trend that parents have no idea about.
To many teens, it's little more than a high-tech way of flirting.
Yeah, naked pictures. No one gives it that much thought, really.
What the teens see as innocent fun with their cell phones can have serious repercussions, because when school administrators catch them, they are required to call the police. That's what happened to 13-year-old Ben Hunt and his best friend John Eicher of Falmouth, Massachusetts. After forwarding a picture of a partially naked girl in their class, the boys may be charged with child pornography.
I've worked hard to get my son to where he is, stay in school, do good grades, and all going to be ruined for one picture.
The boys' fathers are struggling to defend their children in court.
It's scary. It really is. These kids are only 13 years old.
If convicted, they'll have to register with the state as sex offenders. Prosecutors are grappling with how to deal with these cases.
If you possess or disseminate a photograph in a state of nudity of a child under the age of 18, you can be prosecuted under the child pornography laws.
That seems extreme.
It is extreme.
Some who study the juvenile justice system say this is not what child pornography laws were intended for.
It's a miscarriage of justice. The harm of criminal conviction in these cases is much greater than any harm that's caused by the conduct itself.
But the conduct is having profound consequences. Pictures traded with the click of a button can change a teen's life forever. Gigi Stone, ABC News, Falmouth, Massachusetts.
So let's talk about sexting in the context of Louisiana law. For those of you who have young children in the audience, your children need to know that even as a juvenile in Louisiana, it is illegal for them to create a sexually explicit image of themselves. Likewise, of course, it is illegal for them to then send that to someone else using a telecommunication device, a phone, and it is illegal for someone to knowingly possess that image and for then that recipient of that image to distribute that to somebody else. These are all juvenile laws. All right? A lot of kids aren't aware. They don't know that what they're doing is actually breaking the law in Louisiana. Now, we're not going to be prosecuting them, but your state and local authorities have jurisdiction over something like that. We get calls, unfortunately, from school administrators and from parents. And they say, well, my son or my daughter, this image was on their phone. And so what we will do is forensically, someone like Agent Krieger will be able to track that back on the phone and help the state authorities determine whether or not an adult was involved in this and where that image originally came from. So my advice to you all as parents and as grandparents is, if you hear about this or your son or daughter is a participant in this, immediately report it to law enforcement, okay? Because if you don't, what's going to happen is if that image gets transmitted to somebody else and that child's parent or the person who's depicted in that picture or video reports it, they're going to give up the phone, and it's going to be very easily forensically to determine the origination of that photograph. And each of these phones are leaving a footprint of who's receiving it and who's sending it. And then your son or your daughter or your grandchild or niece or nephew is going to be there, 6 o'clock in the morning, police, and they're going to grab them, and your son or daughter is going to run the risk of getting thrown out of school. Okay? We're going to talk about some other unforeseen consequences of this action. But we really need to be vigilant as adults in this digital age and watch what our children and these other kids are doing, because we don't want our children to get caught up in this and to get in trouble and to get thrown out of school and even worse, to face criminal charges. Okay, here's one of the unforeseen consequences. This pretty young woman on the right took a sexually explicit picture of herself, sent her to her boyfriend. Well, guess what happens in high school, right? Kids break up. They broke up, and the boyfriend thought it would be funny to send it all around the school. So that's exactly what he did. And then you can imagine what the classmates said. Slut, whore, tramp. She killed herself. She couldn't take the bullying. She couldn't take the ridicule. All because of an image which she thought was only going to be shared with her boyfriend. All right? We need to convey to these children that this is going on. Here's another tragic story.
At the concrete plant where she leapt to her death, friends of Rebecca Sedgwick created a makeshift memorial. These stuffed animals and balloons reflect just how young she was, 12 years old. Her mother, Tricia Norman, says her daughter's suicide came after months of bullying on social media and in person.
You haven't killed yourself yet? Would you please just die? They got what they wanted.
She says it continued even after she complained to school officials.
I told them, Becca's being threatened. These girls are saying that they're going to jump her, and, we'll talk to them. And then, she would still get jumped.
Norman says the bullying began last December. She did everything she could think of, moved her daughter to another school, and even closed Rebecca's Facebook account. But Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd says the torment didn't stop.
And here's some of the quotes that we found. You should die. Why don't you go kill yourself?
Her mother was unaware Rebecca had recently started using new forms of social media, designed as easy ways for people to stay in touch.
The bullying continued by a group of female juveniles on different social media outlets such as Kik, Ask FM, Instagram, and Voxer.
Finally, it was too much. Rebecca texted a friend saying, "I'm dead. I'm jumping. I can't take it anymore." On Monday, she climbed a tower at a concrete factory and jumped off. Detectives later found even more ominous clues.
We also found on Rebecca's search engines or search questions, how many Advil do you need to take to die?
The sheriff's office is considering filing charges against the students who sent the hostile messages. Jeff.
Don Taylor, thank you very much.
The other thing is, if your children are participating in cyberbullying or any of these events that can lead to a tragic event such as this, you as the parent are subject to civil liability, okay? Even if your child wasn't the one who pushed that child over the edge, every child who allows this to take place and doesn't report it is subject to civil liability for allowing this to occur. So what are some of the popular social networking sites? Of course, you all have heard of all of these things. These are what the kids are using. Agent Brunet talked about Skype, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. If anyone asks, what happened to MySpace, that's so passé. We've got Snapchat. This is something the kids are liking now. Everyone remember Mission Impossible? The beginning of the show starts and with the message, and this message will self-destruct in the next number of seconds, right? Well, that's what Snapchat is basically. Snapchat, the kid can take a picture, send a text, and it's supposed to self-destruct. It's supposed to erase itself after a few seconds. Well, major problem with that is you can just take a screenshot of it, and then it's a permanent record of it. So if your child takes a sexually explicit screenshot of themselves or one of their friends do, another kid takes a screenshot, then they can email, text that, and there's a permanent, it's out there. Also, forensically, these gentlemen at the front table can recover it anyway. So if your child thinks that they're not, that they can hide and law enforcement won't be able to find it, you can tell them, bad news, these guys can find anything. All right. Our recommendations are Instagram, it's something, all of these applications really should not be used by any children under 13. In fact, most of them have user policies that state that they won't be used by 13. Geotagging is something where if you are posting pictures of your child, say you go to Disney World or to Orlando, to Destin or something for spring break, and you take a picture of your child, or you take a picture of your child in your own living room and you post it on your Facebook page. If you haven't disabled the settings on your phone, that geotagging is going to allow a predator who thinks that your particular child is cute and wants to meet them, they'll know latitude and longitude right down to where your house is, or to where your beachfront condo is, or where you were when the picture was taken. So you as parents and grandparents, we need to be mindful of what we're posting out there on the internet, okay? My wife and I, we don't have Facebook, we don't have Instagram, we don't have Twitter, we don't have any of that stuff, okay? Because I see the dangers of it, all right? If we want to take a picture and we want to send it to grandma in New York, my wife sends her an email attachment with the picture. It's point to point, all right? It's not out there on the internet for someone to hack into, or for our friends of our friends of our friends to see and share. All right, 71% of teens and preteens are posting pictures and videos of themselves. 58% of them post information about where they live. And more than 20% of teens are posting inappropriate, sexually explicit images and videos of themselves out there. It's 1 in 5, folks. 30% of parents are allowing kids to use computers with internet access in their bedrooms. tell you how my house is set up. All right, this year my daughter, who's in 6th grade at Trinity, school gave her a computer. That computer is kept downstairs. That computer is not used in her bedroom. All right, Serena, when she's doing her homework, she's either in the family room or she's in the dining room, and we are watching what she is doing with that computer. And when she's done with her homework, the computer goes on a common area where mom's cell phone, dad's cell phone are charging, and that's where it stays until she has to go to school the next morning and bring it with her. That's the way it's always going to be in my house. All right? If you allow your child to take a computer or a phone into their bedroom, you have no idea what they are doing when you're not in that bedroom. All right? My mom's a high school English teacher. One day she was talking to one of her students, and the student is like a zombie in class, and she's like, Johnny, what's the matter? And he's like, I was up all night gaming. And she's like, really? Well, where were your parents? Oh, they didn't know because my door was closed. All right? They could be gaming. Worse, they could be chatting with some of these predators out there. All right? So the computers must stay in a common area of the house, folks. All right? When we were growing up, what did our parents do, right? They'd lock the front door. They'd set the alarm. When they tucked us into bed, they thought we were safe. All right? But if we are giving our kids computers and phones with internet access, these predators are coming right into their bedrooms. All right? You wouldn't do that with your front door. Don't do it with a computer. Don't give them access. All right? 40% of parents aren't reviewing the content of what their kids are doing on their phones and their computers. Look at what they're doing. Look at their call history. All right? Block out apps on their cell phones. All right? Don't let them download apps to their phones. If you have a high school age child and you buy them an iPhone, lock out the apps so they can't download Snapchat. Only you can put an app on the phone. All right? Kids are smart. If you don't do that, all right, they're going to download an app that they know you don't approve of. They'll have it all day long or all weekend long until you look at the phone again. And when they know you're going to inspect the phone, they'll just delete it. So lock them out. All right? 51% of parents don't even have any sort of monitoring software on their computers or anything like that. Know where your kids are going. All right? Another thing. Colleges and universities are looking at what our children are doing online. So, you spend all this time and money educating your child, trying to get them into a good college. Well, if you have 2 applicants from the same school with the same SAT scores, same GPA, same extracurriculars, but this premier university decides they're only going to take 1 from that school. You know what they're doing nowadays? They're Googling them, they're Facebooking them, they're seeing what our children have posted online. All right? And if there's a picture of the child doing something stupid at a Mardi Gras parade or at the beach on spring break, guess which kid is going to get that scholarship? Guess which kid's going to get in that premier university? And guess which one's not? All right? 80% of college admissions counselors are doing searches of their applicants. I do it in the U.S. Attorney's Office. I used to run our law clerk program. All right? I was checking on Facebook. I was looking to see what these kids, I was Googling these prospective students. And I didn't hire some because I saw images out there that I thought wasn't professional. All right. I briefly touched on this smartphone safety. How are we doing on time, Tommy? We've got a couple more minutes. I'll actually skip through this next clip because it basically talks about the smartphones. Make sure you lock out the GPS settings on your phone. You can just Google that if you're going to be taking pictures of your kids. Let's talk about gaming, online gaming. Particularly for the young boys, they're going on things like Xbox Live. And Xbox Live allows you to communicate, play with other people on the internet. The male predators are targeting young boys on Xbox Live. What they're doing is they're playing on these games, and then they're asking them to break off in private communication. They're asking them to break off in text messages, give them a phone number, give them an email address, and they're luring them by using Xbox Live. And that's exactly what this gentleman did. Kevin Essler, he targeted a young boy in Chicago. Once again, these agents were able to identify him through that and arrest him, but he met his victim on Xbox Live. This is Second Life. This is one of those things that you don't want your kids playing. All right? Second Life is basically you create an avatar persona, online persona. You decide what sort of career you want. Drug dealer, mass murderer, pimp. All right? And that's what these kids are doing on there. In fact, I went to a training a couple years back where a particular location on Second Life, if you went to this, quaint little playground and walked up to the swing set and stood in a particular place, it would take you into a sub-basement. It was called Hades, and it was a place where children were being raped. All right? Let's talk about ratting briefly. It's called a remote administration tool. This is something you all can go home and take care of right now. Also known as a remote access Trojan. It's when a hacker turns on your web camera on your computer. All of today's laptops have cameras built in right into the screen. If you look at my home computer, it's got a piece of blue painter's tape over it. That's because hackers now can activate your web camera on your computer. So if you have your computer set up at your house, your computer doesn't even need to be on, they can activate your web camera and watch what you're doing in your house. All right? So worst case scenario when I give this presentation to kids is that if a child has a computer in their bedroom, the hacker can be watching what they're doing in the morning when they're getting dressed and when they're changing their clothes in the evening. So put a piece of tape over that. If you've got I call them old-fashioned, you have one of the external web cameras, unplug it from your computer. When you need to talk to grandma in New York, plug it in, and then when you're done communicating, unplug it, all right? You won't know that they've taken over your computer and access this. I read an article over the summer in Time magazine relative to this. This is becoming more and more common, and in fact, boys as young as 12 and 13 years old are able to do this, and it only takes them about 10 minutes to activate someone else's computer. What they'll do is they'll send an email attachment or something like that. It downloads the rat to the computer and activates the web camera. All right, so what are some safety tips here for you and your family? Obviously, number one, all four of us will tell you, keep the computers out of the kids' bedroom. Keep the phones out of the kids' bedroom. They should never be in their bedrooms. Establish rules for the internet. Some of these things go without saying. Where can the kids go? What sites can they do? All right. My child, who now has a computer, against I wish the school didn't do that, but they gave him the computer anyway. My daughter knows that she can't go to any sort of social networking site. She's only allowed to go to Emoto, I think is the teaching site that her school uses there. So establish rules for internet usage. If parents aren't home, they can't use the computer. Candor. Get your kids talking about this. Engage in a dialogue. Your kids are all, my daughter knows much more about computers than I do, but I'm still talking to her about it. I'm saying, show me what you're doing. How do you do that? How are you logging into this? All right? Get them engaged, but more importantly, because when that creepy guy, that Michael Meany, starts communicating with them on the internet, you need them to tell you so you can call these gentlemen so we can help save a child. Be informed, sort of preach, well, normally I say you're preaching to the choir because you're here, but you guys, I understand, are kind of forced to be here, right? So, there are lots of great resources out there on the internet. You can go to National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's website, www.missingkids.com, and they have all sorts of age-appropriate presentations that you can go through with your children. Safeguard options, filtering softwares, things like that, things that will tell you where your kids are going. I mean, Big Brother them at home. Kids have no Fourth Amendment expectation of privacy in their own home when you're the parents, okay? If they do something bad with the car when they're older, you take the car keys away. If they do something bad with the computer, you take the computer away. Look at what they're doing. Pay attention. Certainly don't allow the kids to participate in cyberbullying and sexting. Copyright violations, something we didn't touch on. If a child's going and downloading a song or a movie over the internet and they're not paying for it, that's a federal law violation. Cell phone safety. All right, and then we're going to conclude on something to lighten the mood a little. This is a few years old, but it's kind of a classic. Where'd it go? I will have to find it. Hang on one second. Yeah. That doesn't look so good.
What's up, everybody? I am pumped to welcome you to the Learning Annex's My Space and You seminar. Today we're going to help you guys set up a MySpace page so that you can communicate with the more than 6 million young people currently in the MySpace community. Okay, let's get started. This is a slightly older group than I was expecting.
Well, I admit I'm not here to start my own MySpace page. My daughter is spending all of her time on it, so I thought I should see what all this hullabaloo was about.
Okay, and the rest of you?
What she said?
Fair enough. Now the first step in creating your MySpace page is to fill out your profile, things like your name, sex, and age.
Now, with the age thing, could my child put a different age than his actual age?
Yeah, I guess they could.
And MySpace doesn't have a way to police that?
Not really.
So if my son was 45, he could say he was 15?
Your son is 45?
I said if he was 45. It's hypothetical.
Well, yeah, technically he could say any age he wanted, but why would he do that?
Well, sometimes people from one age group feel more comfortable around people of another age group. Maybe he wants to put what age his soul is and not what age he actually is.
Well, I am always worried that my daughter and her friends are putting older ages, so that they can seem more mature. Do you gentlemen have the same worries with your kids?
Yes. All right, you can also fill in things like your taste in music or favorite movies. This way you can meet people with similar tastes.
Oh, my goodness. This music my daughter listens to. I don't know how she listens to it. Must be a generational thing.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What kind of music does your daughter listen to?
Let's see. What does she... Oh, well, she listens to a lot of this band called Fall Out Boy.
Okay, now let's move on.
I'm sorry, real quick. Is Fall Out Boy 1, 2, or 3 words?
Oh, I don't know.
I found it as 3 words.
Another fun part of MySpace is picking out a screen name. And one common approach is to use some variation of your name in the year that you were born. So, for instance, mine is DJ Danny 1979. It's a good way to give people a little more info on who you are.
Well, I don't want to date myself, fellas, but you can call me Nancy 1966.
Nice work. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Chadster 1991?
1991 is my favorite number.
Okay, well, Chad...
My name is Larry.
Okay, Larry, well, if you put 1991 in there, it might make people think you're 15.
Well, that's a risk I'm trying to take. I really like the number.
Okay. And what else we got? How about over here? 9th grade skater boy.
Obviously having a little
Fraternity
technical
nickname.
Spelled like the Avril Lavigne song?
Yeah.
And why does it say 9th grade if it was a fraternity nickname?
Because I went to college early. Like, together.
All right, and what do we got here? Naughty girl hot stuff. I don't even want to hear your explanation, but you should know you're going to get a lot of teenage boys wanting to meet you.
Oh, no, I don't want that. Why would I want that? Let me just fix that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Let's say you meet someone on MySpace and want to arrange to meet them in person.
Okay.
Like maybe you're going to meet them at their house.
What's your question?
What's the best way to make sure the Dateline's not going to be there?
Okay, I'm just going to race through the rest of this. You're going to want to select an avatar, which is a visual representation of yourself. Most people choose to use a picture of themselves.
Excuse me? I was recently in a car accident that severely altered my appearance. Is it okay to use a picture of myself from before said accident?
You can use anything you want. Again, MySpace doesn't really have a way to police that.
Excellent.
Just out of curiosity, what did you look like before the accident?
Chad Michael Murray?
You look like Chad Michael Murray?
Before the accident, yes. Pretty much exactly like Chad Michael Murray.
And what kind of accident was it?
A severe one.
I used to look like Ashley Parker Angel.
I've been told I look like Jessica Alba.
You know what? My son loves her. Yes.
Excuse me.
I think I left the lights on in my car. His lights on.
How can I help you?
Well, I'm here to teach a community policing class. Do you know where room 904 is?
Yeah, down the hall.
Hey, thanks a lot.
You should probably tell your daughter to stay off the internet.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, I want to get to the questions, but just real quick, this is our little public service address. We gave y'all some handout information, and obviously there's a brochure booklet that was given when y'all came in. That's basically a snapshot of what Homeland Security Investigations is. Under the Department of Homeland Security, you have ICE, which is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the investigative arm of ICE is Homeland Security Investigations. And in your booklet there on page 22 is the Cyber Crime Center. That's basically the place that we get a lot of information brought out. Brian flowed very well in here because I think he felt at home inside this courtroom. You know, this is the place that he goes and works. And thank y'all for everything that y'all do. The most important thing that you could take away from all of this today is that if you have children, if you have nieces, nephews, young brothers, sisters, cousins, it's the most precious resource that we have. And I see this, the investigative arm of Homeland Security Investigations, Child Exploitation Unit, it's an epidemic right now that's taken over. The internet was built on trust. It's not trustworthy anymore. We have to be careful. Next month, in October, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, along with a lot of other awareness months. But be careful, and I'll ask you this. Watch, act, and teach. Watch what your kids are doing. Brian said that numerous times. Watch. Act upon the information. Inside your handouts, the cybertipline.com. That's the easiest thing. But I'm going to leave you with something even better because we tell this to the kids. We want you to know, talk to the hand. Everybody says talk to the hand. On this hand, you can do 5 things. You could talk to your parents, talk to a teacher, talk to law enforcement. Send it online to the cyber tip line or pick up the telephone. 2.5 million child exploitation leads been sent to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. 2.5 million. You got to watch, act, and teach them. Here's the big one. Teach them. You got to talk to somebody. It's not their fault. It is not their fault. We try to make sure children know, teens know, it's not your fault. If it happens, we can get over it. We can work through it. But you got to be able to teach them that it's not their fault because you don't want them to be afraid. We want them to be the cyber warriors because there's not enough of them out there. We don't want them to be the surfers. We don't want them to be the victims. We want them to be the warriors of the next century because that's what it is, folks. Technology is taking over, and this is the place where the predators are going. My other little public service announcement is in the handout. If you want to give an app to your child on a smartphone, go to Operation Predator. It's in your handout. Go to iTunes App Store and click on Operation Predator. That's the Homeland Security Investigations cybercrime site, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. If you click on that, it's a wake-up call. It's all the predators that are still running out there that we know about that we haven't captured yet. But you can also go there and send a tip. You can send a tip from sitting in a coffee shop. If you see somebody doing something, you can send a tip right from the app. So that's one of the big things. Did we get Shannon loaded up? Here's the most important one. I want to introduce William Shannon Krieger. He's the newest member of the team for Homeland Security Investigations here in New Orleans. He's part of the Hero Corps Coalition. I'm going to let him explain and tell you his story, and it'll make you feel good right before lunch, but then we got to get some questions because I know somebody's got a question, right? That's why we come to these. We want to talk right before lunch.
Thanks, John. I'm going to hit a button here real quick and hopefully.
When I got hurt, I physically couldn't perform my job any longer. And I had to tell the guys that I'd laughed and bled with and sweated with that I can't do the job anymore. And that was really, really a tough pill to swallow for me.
I joined the Army and I was what they call a lifer. I was going to retire from the Army. That was my goal. I got early retirement due to my injuries. What am I going to do now?
And as soon as I read the first 2 paragraphs, protect the National Association to Protect Children, ICE, HSI, all these guys involved in it, it was a simple decision.
When you do this long enough, you're going to realize what a 2.5-inch hard drive looks like.
You spend time overseas going after terrorists, things like that, but there's a whole lot of even worse people right here in our own backyards doing unspeakable things to children. Why would you not want to do anything you can to prevent that, to stop these people from harming children?
Number one purpose is to rescue the children. Now they're going to have a guardian angel coming up. We're going to do something for them.
On the bottom, look to see if you see any icons. There's 2 laptops and only have 1 screw. But
are we qualified? We're qualified because we're special operations. We're the top-notch guys. We're the guys that you don't want us come knocking at your door.
I'm chomping at the bit to be able to apply what we've learned.
For me, I was trying to find a new mission. I'm looking forward to contributing to my community so I can help get some of these people off the streets in the communities in which I'm raising my family.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear truth, faith, and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter. So help me God.
I'm not done serving my country. I fought the foreign enemies. It's time to get those bad guys that are here in my backyard.
That's the whole reason we're here.
This program means so much to me. I have an 8-year-old sister and I have a 14-year-old brother. The reason I joined the military was to protect my family. This film right here. This is what I have to do.
There were actually 22 of us when we started last year, and 14 of us were just recently hired at Homeland Security Investigations this year. So it's actually been a really interesting road. One of the things that I did to get here. Okay. That's my old job. I worked for Special Operations Command of the United States Army out of Fort Bragg. I was deployed from 2001 until 2011 every year, and that's what I wanted to do. That's what I volunteered for. I wanted to fight. I wanted to make a difference. My canine partner right there is, his name is Rudy. He's actually in my backyard right now. When they retired me and I left the command, they let me take him home. He was like one of the best partners and best friends I ever had while I was deployed. He's probably found over 200 bad guys and, you know, half as many IEDs and that kind of thing. And that's what I did. I trained, supported the operators. I was an operator myself and got injured and couldn't do it anymore and became a support guy. And that's kind of, you know, what you do. This is a good time in my life right now, or when this picture was taken. Regardless of your politics, anytime you get to meet the commander-in-chief when you are wearing a uniform, you take full advantage of it. It was kind of really cool. He was really interested. I like this picture because I have a pistol on my chest. You can't make it out, and I was shaking the president's hand, and I thought that was pretty cool. That's just for me. But this is a worse time in my life. This is what happens when, obviously, when you do dangerous things, and this is a possible consequence. This is why I couldn't do the job anymore. And it's, you know, it's what you know, you make do with whatever you have to make do with. This was kind of a goodbye ceremony. That is a 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta plaque. That's where I worked. I'm not supposed to say things like that, but I can tell you what it was. I just can't give you the 5 W's unless you buy me a drink later. Tomato juice. It's my boss. That was another really tough time in my life, is to say goodbye. No one likes to say goodbye to things that they would have done for free. And that's what I would have done, was I would have done that job for free. This is what I do now. I get to help kids. That is the cancer ward from Georgetown Pediatric Hospital. The little girl in the front left, 19 surgeries. Every child had a major organ transplant. I know this because I asked who had more surgeries than me, and I had 16. So when she kept her hand up, it was kind of, you know, she weighs 60 pounds, 70 pounds, and she's a complete fighter. Amazing kids. What they're holding up, if you noticed in that first picture with me and the guy, was I had an American flag on my chest. He had an American flag on his shoulder. Those are combat patches that I got. I called my buddies and asked them, could you send me an American flag? These patches have actually been to combat. And I thought it was kind of fitting that we, you know, that we give these to these kids, because they are fighting for their lives as well. And they've been to combat with what they've been through. So that's what those American flags are for. The Hero Corps is special operations guys who were wounded in combat and have been taught in forensics to come back and help fight child exploitation. That's all I wanted to do, was fight. And this, you know, when you're injured, you don't get to leave it on the battlefield. They basically kicked me out and told me, you can't do this anymore. And I don't know if you've ever been told you can't do something that you love, but I went kicking and screaming. And in 2011, I left the command. No regrets. It was time. And in 2013, I got involved with this program to stop child exploitation. And I do as much of this as I can, which is talk to people like you and with these individuals here. And let me just say this about Homeland Security Investigations New Orleans. They are right on, aggressive. We put bad guys away, and that should make you sleep better at night, because these guys are fantastic at what they do. I am a junior CFA. I am learning. I get to learn something every day. So I'm not the oldest guy in the lab, thank goodness, but I'm certainly the newest. And the idea of taking a veteran, and a combat veteran especially, and showing them these horrible, horrible images, because this is what happens. I see a computer and I start looking at it, and I do all what I do, and I get into your life. I get into whoever's computer that I see wedding photos. You see photos of sonograms and all of these cool party pictures and family pictures, and then you come across an image of an adult male raping a toddler. And these statistics should be enough to tell you that this is one of the most horrific things. There's a quote out there that says, "Children are our most important commodity, and we must do everything we can do to protect them, because without them we cease to exist." So that's what I'm doing here. That's why I get to do this job, and I love doing this job. I really do. I like helping the case agents put bad guys away. So I'm going to leave you with one thing, because I know we're going to go to lunch, and we got some questions, hopefully, is when you enter a room on an assault, you go in, you clear the fatal funnel, you move to your point of domination, you collapse your sectors, and you move. You make sure you have intersecting sectors of fire, and you go to the next room. I know that guy has my back. I know the guy behind me has my back. I know the guy in front of me knows I have his back. We cannot arrest our way out of this problem. Where we're going to win is by you, all of us. I'm a parent, being parents. My mother said, I don't know how to do the smartphone stuff. I can't do that. So we got her a smartphone, and we started playing with her. Now she texts, drives, puts makeup on, does the whole 9 yards. So anytime you say, my kid does that, he doesn't, it's not difficult. They're kids. I promise you, you're smarter than they are. Okay? Do you have any questions for me referencing the Hero Corps or anything that I've said at all? What I'm going to do is pass this over to John so we can start. Any other questions at all?
They're going to direct some mics to you all so we can make sure we get it.
How would a fellow veteran get involved in that?
Okay, I have a loud voice. Well, the Hero Corps has a website called herocorps.net. Thank you are you a veteran? Yes. Thank you for serving, by the way. I appreciate that. We have a website called herocorps.net. The initial parameters were Special Operations Wounded Veterans, but because we are actually starting our 3rd class next summer, I believe it's going to be opened up to a lot more people. So herocorps.net, one word, HEROCORPS.net. And that would be your best way to, and they'll have all the information that you need to get involved there. And if not, I can certainly help you. If you want, we can exchange contact information. Any other questions? Parents. I'm a parent too, except my kid isn't old enough to have a phone. Give me some questions. You would not believe some of the questions that we get from kids. If you have this, can you delete that? And is it going to be over here? And what happens if I take a picture and I delete it? Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Here.
Do you all do any of these presentations at school? Or, I mean, I know you're doing it for parents, but it seems like, you could take it down to their level, although you probably don't. These kids probably could handle it at any level, but do you make presentations like this at school?
Yes, ma'am, we do. The program is called iGuardian, And you can Google iGuardian to find out a lot about that. We go to schools and specifically do this. Our calendar is getting more full as we speak. I am from the North Shore, so I reached out to some of my people there, some of my friends, and we like to target 6th, 7th, and 8th graders because high school kids think they know everything. Where? Oh, the screen. Hey, how are you? What's up?
We want to know if you recommend applications for the phone that might help you monitor what your children are doing on any phone.
Brian, are you any monitoring software that you're familiar with?
We can't recommend a particular company's software, so that'll go up for you. My suggestion would just be to go ahead and Google results of the best available softwares out there and purchase whichever one is highly rated.
Questions? Lunch is just a few minutes away. You're going to have something to think about. Yes, sir.
Are these questions to everyone or just to dealing with the URO program?
No, everyone, please, come on. My supervisor's dying to talk to you.
This deals primarily with the court's operation. We receive evidence, and one of the clerks from one of the other states at a conference said that he was advised that the pornography that we may receive and possess could put us in jeopardy because we are in possession of pornography and we're shipping it from our court to another court. You have any comments on that, or what happens with the work that we have here at the court?
The first word I heard is evidence. If it's evidence, there's a chain of custody. You don't have anything to worry about. Obviously, maintaining that chain of custody and being aware that it's sensitive material. When we have to move evidence, obviously there's all the precautionary measures that are taken with labeling, sensitivity, obviously a warning label. So just to suggest that on a chain of custody side, and obviously the identification of it. If it's electronic, you don't want to be transmitting electronic evidence. You actually want to store that and move it as you would a tangible piece of evidence and send it to them. Is that kind of along the lines of what you're saying? You're receiving this electronically? I would not recommend doing that.
No.
I would not recommend doing any type of transfer of electronic evidence that is suspected or identified as exploitation material of children online.
Our courts of appeal are right now scanning all their records. We are in the process of scanning ours, and they send to us an electronic copy of their record electronically.
Wow, as some type of
it's an appeal to our court from their court. And
so it's an attachment item or something, maybe some exhibits from a proceeding in another district court or something like that?
Right.
Wow. 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 I hope that one don't go to the cyber tip line. Hold on, we got Michael can add to that.
We transmit evidence electronically quite often with our Cybercrime Center in DC, and we use secure file transfer protocols. There's very many you can use. As long as the passwords are encrypted and usernames are encrypted, we actually use a certain file transfer protocol to send investigative leads out to the field. I was in DC for, I guess, a better part of 3 or 4 months working Operation Roundtable and going through thousands and thousands of leads with Jonathan Johnson's computer, which contained about 40 terabytes worth of child pornography evidence. And as we would go through that information and through the thousands of Facebook profiles that he and his cohorts were trying to groom, we would identify the Facebook profile that coincided with the actual child pornography evidence or child pornography video that they documented and stored, and then we would then securely send that through file transfer protocol to another office and give them the secure IP address and username and password to download that. And once download was initiated and completed, the evidence would be removed from that. So as long as it's documented that it's for case purposes and things of that nature, I think you're okay. The only issue that you may have is with your IT department if it's actually going across a secure LAN access for a government entity. Like, we can't receive or send stuff on our Homeland Security network, but we can go on a, we call a cold computer or standalone computer and send it through file transfer.
That's good. Anybody else got some questions? No? We ready to go to lunch? Oh, we got one.
You were talking about computers and how hackers can access your camera on your computer. How about cell phones? Is there any capabilities for cell phones?
Not that I'm aware of. Not yet. You mean some type of activity where they're actually remotely now using your camera on your phone or iPhone? I have not heard of that.
I was just wondering.
Yeah.
My question is, the gentleman, is it on? Hello? Okay. The gentleman was saying that you can control the apps that your kids or your grandkids can load onto their computers. My question is, can that, or you allow your grandchild or whatever to download that app, can they send that app to their friend and their friend can open it without their parents approving it? You cannot, can you? That was my question.
Okay, so we got an app on an iPhone that someone actually has downloaded and they want to send it to someone else?
To their friend or whatever. Can they send that app to their friend without, for free or whatever? I do know that, they forward all kind of things. And
Yeah, if you would, forensically, I don't see that you can actually take an app and try to send that to another phone. No, you're not going to be able to successfully take an app and send it to another person's phone, unless Michael's got a better idea.
Well, recently, dealing specifically with iPhone and Apple products, there is family sharing. Whereas if we as a group were a family and I was the administrator or organizer of that family, I can use my Apple ID and send a message to you as an invite to share my apps. And I can do that with as many people as I want that are in my family. You would have to accept that invite, and then if I were to download Wall Street Journal app and say, or I would download some type of app that I would have to pay for, then you as a part of my family, if you're searching and want to download that app, you wouldn't have to pay for it again. It would be free, but it would be in that family that was already set up by the one organizer of that family sharing group.
I'm not interested in what it would cost, like it was free. I just wanted to know if the child that has that app has the capability of forwarding to another friend.
Not the app specifically. The app would have to be searched for and then installed by each respective user.
That was a good question.
Would like to thank y'all for your time and attention today. Give a round of applause to our guests. And Mr. Olivier, we're going to put you in touch with them with any more, well, we'll leave that up to you all. Thank y'all for your participation in this meeting. Thank you.
I don't have